Hi, everybody.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You're all set.
Great, so this evening, everyone, we have a joint session of the Planning Commission, and the Supervisors, for the purpose of reviewing our draft sign ordinance. Basically, the format I'm gonna go through is not to spend more than an hour on that, and we're going to let Alex, who helped draft this with our committee with Michael and David, go through the notes from last time, then we will address section 7, the illumination standards per the TNM review that John conducted. Then we will go through the sections we did not touch last time, 12 to 21. And then we're gonna pick out when we meet next, just so it's on everyone's radar. I'm hoping that the next planning commission meeting, we can do the same. If not, we'll address that after we go from here. So
Let me
Alex,
finish one thing. For those that are here for the regular planning commission meeting for November, who are interested only in the 3 Point Garden Road subdivision item that is on the agenda. We got a request this afternoon that it be tabled and pushed to the December meeting. So I just want to let anybody know, if anybody wanted to leave, I can just simply tell you, we will not be taking up the 3 Point Garden Road project this afternoon, this evening. What? Yes,
Why is it continuing to be tabled?
I don't know, you have to ask them. I don't know.
I have a good idea why.
Well, whatever the case may be, they're allowed to ask. So I just wanted to say that, so if people wanted to, if you, believe me, you're all welcome to stay. For as we go through, as we start with the lighting, but if that was the only part you were interested in, I didn't want to get to it and people feel as though they didn't, they got sold a bit of it.
Won't their permit expire now? They'll have to go through the process all over?
No, they're gonna go through whatever it is with the solicitor. I'm just telling you, it'll be on the December meeting.
we don't have any existing.
Right.
They don't have a firm.
There's no permit to ask. There's no permit that
Did they
expires.
ask for an extension until November 20th?
They can ask for whatever they want. I'm telling you right now, the only thing I have is that they've asked for it to be tabled in December, and it is up to them. That's it. That's it. That's it. No more questions today. We're starting our next meeting. Okay, go ahead, Jake.
Alex, do you like how you
Want to
write?
go? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board and commissioners. So the sign ordinance is on your agenda for discuss the draft signage ordinance. So at the last meeting, the joint group here got through section 11 and I have a few. It's page 47.
We got through 46.
46, we got through 46. We're gonna be getting on section 12. Okay, so commissioners have
Alex?
Yeah.
Is this the 916 version still?
9/16/24 version.
The original or no comment? The original?
It's the one that says no comments, it should be page 47.
Got it, thank you.
And so the commissioners have this document that I actually didn't reprint the whole thing, since most of you already have it. So when we do it, some of you will have the full ordinance if we had some remaining, but everyone else, don't be alarmed if it starts on this page, okay? Is everyone clear on that? I just want to make sure, so if you open up, you're like, hey, where are the definitions section? Well, I didn't reprint the whole thing just because it was redundant. We printed it twice already. Okay, so you had some notes. One of them was to note interactive signs. The other one was a question about 4x4 signs in all districts as a right. There was a conversation about temporary for sale signs that are directional in right of way. That was a question for Ron that he did answer in his memo. We'll get to if we still have time at the end. There was a necessity to reference the lighting ordinance in the sign lighting section. There was a error that needs to be fixed on the lighting ordinance table for residential for illuminated signage. And then section 7 rather was reviewed by John Tressler in its entirety, and that memo is part of your packet. There was also I need to make sure there was no illuminated signs allowed in residential districts. Home occupations, there was a question about making a smaller sign for things like CPAs. And then there was look into TODS and logos program and consider removing off-premise signage for directional signs. And that is all the notes that I have here before you. So, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, we can go over, you said you wanted to go over John's memo on section 7. That should be the one that says big memo. It should be in the back of your packets if you want to do that, or we can just jump into section 12. It's your call, Mr. Chairman.
Let's start on 7 because we didn't really touch it because we wanted John to look at it first.
Okay, so John was kind enough to actually redline all of his recommended changes for that section, so.
There it is.
So there's a memo and then there's a red line document, which basically is just a recommendation for edits on a line by line basis, which was super helpful. And so the joint group here, you know, you can go through the memo. If you want me, I could kind of narrate you through it if you want to go through it. Okay, or maybe John.
You do it, Alex.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so first item on the memo is add language in red, section 1B. So it's probably easiest to just go through the red line document. Because John was kind enough to just put little arrows and bubbles next to every one of his comments. So basically, John recommends adding or adjacent properties. Good. Right, and then the next one is, I mean, there's a lot to go over here. It's very detailed.
Keep at it.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
I'll be cautious.
Number 2, the township should consider a range of 250 nits to 500 nits. And for those who are wondering what is a nit, it's a level of lighting specific to signage. It's sort of a measurement of how, like, you know, TVs and other like internally lit things like that are actually measured, as opposed to like lumens and foot candles. Anyway, the township should consider a range of 250 to 500 nits. They did some research and found that a minimum of 500 nits is recommended. If a range is considered, additional language should be added requiring a reduction of illumination levels to a minimum of 250 nits should the sign become a nuisance to pedestrians, vehicles, or adjacent properties. That was the comment. The next one, number 3, is add language in red to section 2A7. And I believe that is 2A7. Right, on page 34. Yeah, there's a little blurb that says add residential use in that line. Number 4 in here.
Can I ask about that?
Yep, please jump right in.
That seems excessive to me, but, you're sort of recommending that within 400 feet of residential zone, even if it was in a commercial zone, you're not allowed to have an externally lit sign. I'm not talking about a light emitting, but.
Well, we didn't come up with this comment. What we're trying to clarify is if you're putting it within 400 feet of a residential zoning district, we would think that the intent is to shield a use. So if there's a use in that district.
So like apartments, for example.
Yes.
Above commercial.
Right. Well. No, that's not that. It's, for example, if you have this use adjacent, this sign adjacent to a residential district, and you've got a single family house within 200 feet of the sign.
This says 400, but.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be in violation of this ordinance, were it to be adopted.
Okay.
That's what we're saying.
Even if, because I know there's all sorts of language in here about, zero light actually hitting their property.
As I said, I was only clarifying, what is that, might be a small difference between a residential zoning district lot or a residential use. Whether the 400 feet is the appropriate number, I didn't come up with that.
That was what was, that must have come from the model ordinance, Alex.
I understand what you're saying, Michael, and I think we should not put in the word residential use, because in the ED district, there would be apartments above the commercial. which would then not allow any signage or any illuminated signage.
Yeah.
So 400 feet is kind of excessive, especially if there's a commercial right next to a residential zone, which does happen.
Yeah, I mean, we wanna make sure we protect those, anyone in a residential zone from having light, but I thought our lighting ordinance sort of was doing that by basically not, what was it, 0.5 foot candles?
Yeah, there was some.
No,
There's supposed to be
excess.
0 at the property.
Zero at the property line, so if there's 0 at your property line, you have 0 light hitting your property, why would you care if there might be a little light shining on sign 400 feet away?
So could we consider striking that one?
Strike 7.
Yeah,
Strike it or change it from 400 to maybe 100 or something more reasonable, so that they don't put it right on the edge of the property line, that it's placed a little bit more discreetly.
Right, making it less?
Instead of 400 feet, make it 100 feet.
Well, that means even 100 feet
I'm
away.
sorry,
Yeah,
You mean
I just feel like we have to make sure that it's clear that there's 0 light bleeding off of the property. So is that written in here, Alex, that there, I know it's in our,
yeah, going from 400 to 100 is less restrictive.
no, it's more restricted.
Less restricted to the sign.
I'm sorry, what?
It says on 9, to answer Michael's question, there should be no more than 0.2 foot candle spillover on adjacent properties.
So maybe
For
that says
internal.
0.
Does that cover it then?
Well, maybe can that say 0 foot candle spillover for residential properties? And then,
Well, there's external and internal, so for internally illuminated signs, it's 0.2 foot candle spillover, and then for externally illuminated, which is the one actually section around it says, also may not spill onto the air, it's also 0.2 foot candles. The question is, can you reduce it to 0, which is, you could.
I mean, I would just say strike 7,
Mhm.
which is about 400 feet from a residential zone having it at all. If you can confirm that 0 foot candles at the residential zone, maybe that's an impossibility. I'm not an engineer. I don't know what 0. Is that like an impossibility? Cause like a star is.
Well,
0.0.
with a sign, it's probably more difficult than with lights, because with lights, you can shield them and focus them down. With a sign, it sits there and it's lit, so it would be pretty difficult to put a sign, say, within 10 feet of a property line
And
that's illuminated and not have spillover.
Well, right now you're saying 400. Is there spillover at 400? I mean, that's the.
My guess would be no.
I mean, maybe can we just
not with any permitted.
do a
lighting.
little research just to see like at what distance would you have 0 foot candles? And if that's 400, then you just make that the rule.
Isn't it subject, what you're saying is, your illuminated sign that would be adjacent to a residential district is still subject to the light requirements of section, whatever we do call that.
I think,
And that's what does it.
I think that's what Scott's saying is.
That's really, yeah, that's really what it is.
Because, for example, you could have a sign that's 6 feet above the ground and have it illuminated, that's 10 feet off the property line, and maybe there's no spillover. Put that same sign 30 feet high.
Yeah.
At the same location, I think you're gonna get spillover. So I think the better way to regulate it would be, as Scott said, just. If you're gonna allow some,
Subject to the requirements of our lighting.
right, no spillover from signs, or signs
Yeah.
must conform to the
Then
lighting.
you don't have to worry about
ordinance.
distances or anything.
Yeah.
That's probably the better way to come at it.
Well, I have to remember the lighting ordinance, I think it's 0.5 foot candle spillover for commercial, so commercial properties and 0.2 spillover.
Okay, whatever it is, that would be
Makes
subject
sense.
to whatever
There's
is in the lighting
redundancy,
ordinance.
there's redundancy between these.
Especially if you're making, for some reason, the sign lighting more restrictive than say the parking lot
Mhm.
light in that commercial zone. What's the difference? Cause then we don't have an illuminated sign, we have an illuminated parking lot that is in, and the sign is there, right?
Yeah,
Well, then the thought on waivability comes in anyway too, right? Because if there's something that's gonna require this much thought on that, we can have discretion on that item.
Yeah.
that's a good point.
That's at least market for,
Yeah, we're gonna mark that 400 foot one 7 and
We're on page 34. Oh, sorry, we're on 34 of. 34, we're looking at, John's comments on the lighting.
so John's comments, 4, 5, and 6 are corrections, typo corrections. References needed to be corrected, and then section 7, there was an NA that needed to be put in there for residential districts. So 4, 5, and 6 are just basically typo corrections, and then the next big comment is 7 for dark sky international suggestions, and there should be some deliberation on whether to incorporate these changes, and that's on the second page of John's memo. So, you know, dark sky recommends, and some of these have been discussed, signs greater than 20 square feet shall comply with the illumination times required by section 1B. Signs less than 20 square feet may remain lit for 24 hours per day. The township may consider this language, however, we do not believe it's required.
Where would that be inserted?
So that's referencing the hours of operation. If you look on page 32 of the red line.
32D, that was my question. What if they're open 24 hours a day?
Yeah, yep. And so, so that's some recommendation from the engineer there.
Bill?
Well, we only recommend you consider it. We did say, we don't believe it is required. We did want to bring it up for discussion because.
Well, nothing's required, John.
Right.
So is that in addition to what's written in D? So it'd be like whichever is later, or to just delete D and replace with what you have written there. Is that what you're, is that what you could, is that what they're considering here?
Yes.
So anything, a sign less than 20 square feet can remain lit 24 hours a day. Basically, is the difference, is based on square footage as opposed to
Hours of operation.
hours of operation.
Yeah.
That's up to you guys.
So we have right now, same on that.
I'm not sure of anything.
Now you
Yeah.
can do whatever you want.
I think it'd be simply on. Yeah.
Correct.
Right, okay. Yeah, I didn't think there was, I didn't think there was.
No, I think this recommendation would make sense.
Yeah, I'm okay with what John suggested. Okay.
So
You don't have to ask me, you know I am.
so you can strike that and replace with John's
Well, no, you gotta keep 1D.
To get to the first part.
Yeah.
His first bullet says it's in reference to 1D.
Yes.
You wanna add this to 1D, not strike entirely and
It would be,
replace?
well, those four bullet points would go under D as I, double I, triple I, et cetera, similar to
It'd be an extra, it'd be E,
similar to 1E.
Yeah,
and then all the other letters would go forward.
Yeah.
See how 1E is?
Mhm.
You just instead of bullets, you have the I, double I, triple I
yeah,
Oh, under D.
under D.
yeah.
All these. All right.
Okay, the next one is if an electronic malfunction occurs, a sign shall default to nighttime mode or remain unlit. The township should consider adding this language under section 1 and revise sections 2, 3, and 4 to include similar language.
I mean, I would agree with that. I don't think,
Yeah.
I think that's something that's readily account,
Yep.
you know, 25 years ago, that was a hard thing.
Yeah.
Now it's not, somebody got chips and everything. That's not such a, I don't think that's very, I don't think that's a particularly onerous thing.
Separating.
Okay, we can add, we can.
Yes.
The next one is something that came up in the last meeting, I believe, Scott, we had talked a little bit about this. Illumination of static signs be from the top of the sign and directed downward. If the township should consider adding this language to section 2A.
Agreed?
Yeah, that was my suggestion, that no matter what,
Yes.
yeah, Dave was, yeah, Dave
No,
was too.
The majority of these little signs that I see are not done that way.
The new ones will be there. Once you put this ordinance in, the new ones will be there. Isn't that
That's it,
remarkable?
yeah.
It's remarkable how this stuff works.
Is it better that way?
It is.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that's probably in keeping with the dark skies.
Right.
it is, so you end up with less glare up. Honestly, it probably even makes it easier for those externally lit signs to even comply with the goals that we're looking for the spillover and the foot candle stuff. Because it'll be on their sign and pointed down, which is really all they want to see their sign.
Yeah.
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 I mean, it's more expensive, obviously.
Not necessarily.
Not really.
If you're gonna
All the
put,
signs right now are just lights that are sitting on them.
Right.
sure, but if you're gonna put like that,
Right.
like this way, I mean, literally, yeah, I don't know if that's such a big
It's not
deal.
cost prohibitive.
I don't know if that's such a
Let
big
Adam
cost.
know.
No, it's not cost prohibitive, it is more, but whatever, it's fine, all right.
Okay, the last one is excluding trademark logos of electronic messages shall be positive contrast. Light colored fronts featured on dark background and shall contain no more than 35% white area within the displayed image. Light on dark messages are more legible and are legible at greater distance. The township may consider this language, however, we do not believe it's required. I guess, John, which section is this in reference to exactly?
You did have a trademark here, under section 7. What was 7 or actually, right above section 7.
Yeah, it was this one, right? This
Yeah.
one we're looking at, right?
Right,
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
one with the cloud.
I think that's getting into the.
I don't know that I have a problem, yeah, I think that's a lot.
just
Yeah, I mean,
throw it out there.
Yeah, let's break down one, I think.
Okay. All right, that's the entirety of section 7. So if you're all satisfied, I can add these, what was discussed to the notes, the running list, and then, Mr. Chairman, I think it'd be appropriate to jump into section 12 now and try to get through the rest of the draft ordinance.
Do you wanna go through the legal questions? There's a memo on that too.
That's up to you. That's up to the board. You'd like to do that, or you want to try to get through the sections and then do the memo?
My thought was kind of go through the sections that we haven't gone through yet, and then we can compare this against everything. And then if we have changes today, then we can incorporate that.
So we'll say everything, right, section 1, 5.
That's true.
I mean, some of the legal comments are related to sections we've already been over, but we can do it after. Let's just go.
Yeah, let's start at 12. Page 47.
Would you like me to lead you through it?
Yeah.
Okay. So section 12, regulations by sign type, portable signs. So this is a continuation of our last discussion. Portable signs, there's a bunch of general provisions: illumination, hours display, and then there's some provisions on sandwich board or A-frame signs. Now, portable signs are signs, they're probably not gonna have a lot of these in Smithfield Township, but you know, if you go somewhere like Honesdale or something like that, or downtown Strasburg, sometimes they'll put a portable sign out. And then, you know, in certain situations where this might be applicable in your township, there's hours of display, they're not allowed to be illuminated. There's also, you know, these are also permitted in addition to other signs, so you can have these simultaneously with some of the, like, a limited duration and temporary signs and things like that. They're permitted in all districts.
There's no permit required for portable signs as
Correct.
per this ordinance.
And there's a bunch of standards for portable signs. Area is limited to 7 square feet, height is limited to 3.5 feet. Sign placement, you know, has to be, you know, if they're placed on sidewalks, they need to be a minimum of 36 inches of unobstructed sidewalk clearance to be maintained between the sign and the building. Sign must be located on premise within 12 feet of the entrance of the establishment that it advertises. They can have manual changeable copy signs when integrated into a sandwich board signs. Commercial messaging must be advertising only goods and services available on the premise. And then there's a prohibition of vehicular signs. So it says vehicular signs are strictly prohibited as portable signs and subject to the standards of prohibited signs. You can't have like you can't roll your van out and call it a portable sign and then drive it back in with a.
Right.
I think the key on portable signs is they literally have to be portable, you have to be able to take them down every day.
Yeah, that's part of it, says that.
The first section, hours of display must be taken down.
Okay, you got me on a different calendar.
during inclement weather also.
And again, I mean, okay, we took this, just a reminder, we took this from a model ordinance. I think the idea of this is if there's all these regulations around certain signs or certain regulations, you don't want then someone just putting up a giant billboard that is effectively portable and getting away with it. So you have to have some restrictions on that.
I have a question, Jim. What were the criteria by which you chose the model ordinance? This was Montgomery County or
Choose Montgomery County.
why?
We looked at like, what were there, like 4 of them? It was almost more like the format for me anyway, looking at it, just ease of understanding.
I will add that it was also very similar to the municipal planning code model as well. They were very similar.
That Montgomery's was similar to ours?
To the municipal planning code, the state.
The MPC?
Yeah, they were similar.
I mean, this isn't necessarily Montgomery's signage ordinance either, it's a model ordinance that they have, I guess, used to create there, so they're slightly different, maybe it's exactly.
Slightly different, county, slightly different area.
Yeah, but we chiseled it away quite a bit to make it around.
I mean, there's actually like 15 sections that were removed because they're unapplicable.
Yeah, it was a
Historic
lot.
district. I mean, we went, just to remind David, Alex and I met every Tuesday for 6 months.
Seems like it.
To go through every chapter and work it, so we thought it was appropriate for this town.
Pared it down.
But we also felt, in starting, we felt that our signage ordinance was so out of date, illumination, everything, that it was better to start with a model than to try to completely redo ours.
Rejigger, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And it needs to be readable and usable.
Right.
That's in and of itself, it must be.
And as a reminder, you know, this is 60-some pages long. The first
Those are 30.
30 pages are basically definitions
And pictures,
and pictures.
which is great.
One of the other challenges we had is that we had one of the supervisors wanted it to be very short. And we kept that in mind, but at the same time, whenever we tried to make it short, we were eliminating things that we thought were very important to keep. So we made it as short as we could, but yet it's clear and precise as we could.
I think what makes sense, just to quickly comment on that, is for the most part, you're not going to have every single type of sign, so each relevant section is relatively short compared to the need of the individual, right? So
Right.
I think that makes sense.
The next section is the street pole banners, so like if you go to East Stroudsburg University, you see the little, signs on street pole banners. Again, not super likely to be applicable in your municipality, but it's maybe down along 447. In certain parts of the township or in future town centers, it might be something that's applicable, so I think the committee kept it in here. And again, it's standards for illumination, area, height, location, installation and maintenance. These do require a permit in accordance with, section 18. So it's a little bit different from the, portable signs in that sense.
Did you steer me to a street pole banner example?
Down Stroudsburg, all the veteran signs
Yeah.
are all street pole banners.
Yeah.
But I don't think we have any in right
They
now.
stand out or do they blow in the wind?
No, they're.
No, they're like
They're not
if you go down
banners.
Stroudsburg,
Yeah,
you know, all the
they've got-
veterans.
They've got
that-
tension, they don't really glow.
They
Gotcha.
don't flappable.
Okay.
The banners you're thinking about, we called we actually redefined them because originally they were defined as just
Yeah.
flags. We call them banner flags.
Okay,
And they are temporary only, can only have them up for 30 days.
so these are signs that stand out from the street pole.
Yes,
And does the street pole cannot, I take it, be a utility pole?
Correct, that's in another section that says you
Okay.
have to have permission,
No, I understand, yeah.
I think, right?
It says no street pole
No.
banner shall be located on a pole that has traffic or pedestrian control signals. They
Right,
shall not interfere with the visibility of traffic to signals or
Yeah.
signs.
right. Yeah,
They shall maintain 3 feet of vertical clearance below any luminaires located on the pole measured from where the ballasts connect to the pole. No street pole banner shall extend beyond the curb line. Height, when a street pole banner's edge is less than 18 inches from the curb, the lowest edge of the street pole pole banner shall be at least 14 feet above the finished grade. These are all from the model
And
ordinance.
these are all distinct from like the middle Smithfield banner that's near Country Club that says like 75th anniversary of the car
Cross.
company, et cetera. Right.
So this model ordinance actually references those, that you can only cross a road if you have permission from the township, I think.
Right.
And
Property
both
owners.
sides. Property owners. Yeah.
Cool.
And by the way, this ordinance also says no snipe signs whatsoever. So
Yeah.
snipe signs are any
Yeah.
sign that is nailed to a
Right,
pole,
right,
electrical pole.
right.
So, I mean, those are owned by the utility company anyway, so it shouldn't be an effect.
Yeah.
They put them next to Trent.
The lost cat sign, previous night sign.
80s.
Will they ever do? Okay.
So section 14, now we get into the bulk of the functional part of the ordinance, which is signs by district, sign types by district. And so the committee spent quite a bit of time, making sure that this matched your municipality in terms of, because every municipality has different zoning districts and each zoning district is unique, right? So long story short is any limited duration sign, is allowed in the residential and R1, R2 and RC districts. Any temporary sign as defined by that section are allowed. And then it gets into home occupation signs. So, you know, there's a bunch of standards for home occupations, freestanding signs for residential developments or apartment buildings containing more than 10 units shall be permitted subject to the following regulations. There's.
Can I stop you, Alex? there for a second?
Please.
So
If you think.
starting at section 14 is sort of where the rubber meets the road in terms of this ordinance, because before it, we were talking about types of signs, which types of signs are allowed, which types of signs are not allowed, what's the definition of signs, if it's an on-premise sign or an off-premise sign. And now it says, okay, you're allowed to have this sign on premise or off premise or whatever under the previous guidelines. Now, what are you allowed to do in the R1, R2? The next chapter is in the resort. The next one is in ED and M1, which is combined, actually. Is there any more? That's it.
M1.
ED and M1, we did the same in this case. So from this page, from 49 through 56, every chapter is sort of structured the same way. And this is where your total area of signage is allowed and what this is where it might get complicated for people trying to put up signs. They're gonna have to understand how many feet signage am I allowed to have and all that sort of stuff. 24 square feet maximum, all this sort of thing. But I would think that the area that the group would want to spend the most time looking at is residential. You know, what can you put in a residential? There's not a lot that's allowed.
One of the things that's nice is when our map link is up that deals with what uses are permitted in what zone, it allows you to click parcel by parcel to see what options you have. We can add the signage regs to them too, so it should be fairly easy to know what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bob?
And
Yeah, on 8A on page 52 says a maximum of 15%. But 8A on page 54 says 25%.
52 is RE zone and 54 is a EDM1 zone.
So they are different.
With different zones where they'd be allowed.
So the percentages should be different.
Yeah, basically, that's all that changes in these things are the numbers.
Yeah, each section has a table which kind of sums up the criteria for signage. So if you look on page 50, that's where the table begins on page 51, and you can see. So for residential district, there's wall and projecting signs and freestanding signs, and then you have the maximum number, maximum area, maximum height for each of those types of signs.
So, I mean, again, back to what I think people want to think about. I mean, right now, what is allowed in a residential zone? It does say that you're allowed to have limited duration signs, and it does say that you're allowed to have temporary signs, and I'm not positive that we want to do that. Temporary signs are a lot of different options, and maybe we don't want to have them at all. I do believe that no signs can be lit. Is that correct or no?
That's what you had agreed, no illumination in the residential
Right.
district, no illuminated signage.
And then besides that, you're basically allowed home occupation signs and residential developments, apartment buildings.
Right.
All right, question, an example, home occupation sign.
Yeah.
This gets us into an area that we may not want to venture to. again tonight, but I bring it up every time. On the front, there's a sign 6x6 or 6 foot square, and it says George Thompson, construction. And in the back, there's a barn that has all sorts of construction equipment and so forth and so on, dirt diggers and that sort of thing. And he uses it to ply his trade in the area. But it's clearly not an approved use for a residential zone, is it? Or is it not?
I mean, have to talk to the solicitor, I agree, I think that home occupation, my understanding of home occupations is like a CPA.
Right.
And I think the idea is there's supposed to be like a extremely minimal number of visits, like you're not really supposed to have people coming to your house.
Right.
You're not supposed to have parking.
Right.
If I could answer your question too, I think it's a non-conforming use that was established before the zoning was in place.
Which was?
The construction example he gave, the construction contractor.
What, I don't know if you're talking about a specific example.
If it is, then it becomes a pre-existing non-conforming use.
Right.
Does you want to get the home,
Ron,
where's the home occupation definition? Does anyone have access?
are we barking up a crazy tree here?
Well, again, we have to see how the home occupation is defined in the zoning ordinance.
Yeah.
I mean, we can look at that.
There's a section on signs on the premises of legally non-conforming uses as well, section 20.
But I don't think that's what he wants. He wants to know, like, can that be defined as a home occupation?
We need to go by step.
Wait, if it
What
doesn't
is
occupy the actual home, then now, the home occupation for a business, at least as I understand it, means it's literally in the residence.
Contained by the residents.
Yeah, and you're supposed to be like, you work from home and you have an office in your house.
An accountant, right.
27-508.
I believe home occupation is also restricted by the number of employees. I think there's something in there. We can have no more than
In the
one.
MD.
27 what? Two,
I believe that is.
Dash 508.
508.
You want this one, Michael? Here, take this one.
I got it. Definition. This was last in 2008. Within a structure, business activity, primary land use is residential, occupation or business is purely incidental to such residential use. Permitted districts. Extent of the business limited to a maximum of 30% of the house is used for business. Number of non-resident employees limited to 2. So you're right, maximum 2 people can work there. Amount of the time that this will be open to the public is limited to 10 hours a day.
Right,
These are all defined.
you're aware, everyone in this room is aware that there are many non-conforming but not pre-existing uses in the residential zones in this township that have other than that have occupations other than that,
Okay,
like construction or excavation or landscaping. And these are things that have just grown up
You're right.
recently. Do
Right.
you agree with me?
I agree.
so as it
Auto
relates to
mechanic.
this.
Yeah.
As
It
it
doesn't
relates,
relate to the discussion.
as it relates to this
I
signage
understand
ordinance that we're
but
talking
I'm
about,
mentioning, yeah,
and signs for home occupations,
That's
we're
the
talking
only
about
thing.
this.
yeah, okay.
Right. There's a lot of rules that have to be met. Changes and
Yeah,
expansions.
okay, we've looked at all that.
Business nuisance, whether or not a business activity will cause a nuisance surrounding properties, existing property maintenance codes, fire codes.
Okay. Now, Alex, you did want to mention that the existing non-conforming use regulations for signage.
Mhm.
There is.
We'll get to that. That's
Okay,
section 20.
all right, very good.
We've
Thank
got to
you.
get through the signs by district first.
Okay, let's go.
But Michael had asked a good question, whether or not the community wants temporary or limited duration signs in residential districts.
Limited duration signs require a permit and temporary ones do not, correct?
What would you use them for? Yard sales?
Right.
Well, and technically you need a permit for yard sale, but yes, I mean.
Yes,
By this right, somebody could technically put up a giant banner in their residence and it'd be allowed for up to 30 days.
To advertise
I
what?
don't know why they would, do- and as you will say, if it was a political view, they're allowed to do it anyway. We
Right.
They can do it anyway,
can't stop,
Yeah.
no one can stop that anyway. I'm just saying,
Yeah, I mean, really, the only thing I could think of would be something like
yeah.
the odd yard sale.
It
You could
says these
strike-
types of signs may include notice of special events, festivals, yard sales. That's a temporary sign.
Okay, maybe the odd church in the residential district that's having their sign for their festive.
But that's a non-conforming use, we're not talking about that.
I don't think so.
They're permitted.
In R1.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, they're permitted.
A limited duration sign says these may include signs relating to real estate sales, construction, or other similar types. So these are like, you know,
St. John's
Yeah,
barbecue. dude.
literally, but not intended to be, well, no, the other one is supposed to be for like festivals, special events, temporary
Yeah, there we
signs.
go, festival.
And then
Yeah,
limited duration is really like, this house is gonna be for sale for
I
like
think
a
the
year,
reason-
but probably not forever.
The reason here's another key point, because I remember we talked about this probably like 4 months ago, guys. The reason we weren't too worried about this is because those signs are still restricted to on premise.
Yeah,
So you couldn't have a giant banner saying Joe's Garage,
400 feet.
400 feet that way, because it has to be in a residential zone.
yeah, I'm not,
Cool.
I don't envision getting too worked up over this particular one.
The other big
Too
thing-
many Instances.
The other big thing in the R1, R2 that's RC, very different from the model ordinance is we've added parks in here.
Right.
Because we felt all the parks in Smithfield Township are in R1 or R2 zones or RC zones.
Okay.
All right.
And and the model ordinance had a whole other section for parks as a zone, because I guess in Montgomery County, parks are zoned separately. So we just tried to pull what was allowed in parks. If it is a park, you can have certain things, there's all about baseball diamonds and stuff like that.
Right. This makes sense.
That's good.
Easy.
Next sign's resort district?
Yeah.
Which is state, zoning maps over there, so I can't show it, but resort, you have a certain limited number of acres in your municipality that is in the resort district, and so. These are all the provisions for signage there, so anything that was permitted in the residential carries over into this automatic, as it's written, basically, so anything that we already discussed here today is. Permitted in the resort district, that's the first criteria.
Okay.
Portable signs now are permitted here. Again, temporary, limited duration are also, and then also street pole banners. So now you're starting to add more and more sign types to these districts, and then there's. The next criteria is the total area of any wall, awning, canopy, projecting sign shall be limited to 1.5 square feet. 1 linear foot of building frontage that faces a public street or parking lot. Subject to maximum size limitations based on sign type, and there's provisions for wall signs for non-residential uses. That goes on, there's awning and canopy signs for non-residential uses, there's projecting signs for non-residential uses, there's window signs for non-residential uses, there's freestanding signs for non-residential uses. And all of those criteria are summarized on page 52 and page 53 in the table. For wall canopy, projecting window, freestanding signs, based on the maximum number, maximum area, maximum area total, maximum area for each individual sign, and then maximum height. So you can all see where the. And after it's something. So the resort district is here and here, municipality, right? So up here,
See Shawnee and.
I'm not gonna try to name any particular businesses, but yeah. And then
Okay.
this little section up here, on the
Yeah.
border of Middle Smithfield.
What's that one?
Go.
What's the one on the border of Middle Smithfield?
There's a few properties up there.
Well, that's like the one part of Mount Manor that was once sold. I think it's
Oh.
Rich's Promise. I have no idea what it
Far
ended up.
up by the lake, Scott, I think,
Yeah.
Okay.
about just above the lake.
It's on Mountain Lake House.
Yes.
Yeah.
It used to be the old Mountain Lake House. That's,
Promise was very in
that's the
like a
one.
veterans retreat type thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
that's
guy
the
was
one.
from
But he never
Virginia,
did.
right?
He
Yeah.
sold it now. He's someone else owned it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next
Makes
one's the
sense.
big one in terms of like significance here. So this is signs in ED and M1 districts. And so like RE, all the signs that were permitted in residential and resort are also permitted in ED and M1. Also portable signs, street pole banners, and then there's again, total area of wall signage is different. Then they go into criteria for wall signs, awning of canopy signs, projecting signs, window signs, marquee signs. There's, in addition to building signs, freestanding signs for residential users shall be permitted to the following regulations. 1 sign per street frontage, up to 2 signs per property held in single and separate ownership. There's, provisions for permitted gas stations, 1 additional freestanding sign per street frontage shall be permitted. For the advertising of gas prices and identification of the gas station, only up to 2 additional signs per property, and for permitted drive-through establishments, 1 additional freestanding sign shall be permitted for the advertising of items for sale for the users of drive-through, like the McDonald's menu.
Yeah, right, that's. yeah,
So,
the
and then there's provisions for area, each sign shall have maximum 50 square feet, plus additional 10 square feet per tenant, up to a maximum of 100 square feet. Sign height up to 20 feet, illumination. You can have illuminated signs in these districts, so there's internal illumination, message center sign, and digital display signs as per the illumination standards. Upper level building identification signs, there's provisions for that. Off-premise signage shall be permitted, subject to the regulations detailed in this section, as well as those detailed in signage type, off-premise signage. So that the billboards, off-premise signage are allowed in this district. And then there is the table which summarizes pretty much everything I just said. So you have the wall and canopy, projecting window, marquee, freestanding, and then there's the optional upper level building identification. So you have maximum number, maximum total area, maximum area for each individual sign, and then maximum height. So this is intended to be the most permissive in the ordinance.
So one thing I think would be helpful for sort of giving a stamp of approval is if there was a couple of examples in our township where it's like, under the new ordinance, this would be fine and these ones would not be allowed. I can think of a few that I think are not allowed. But I also wonder about some retail chains where they're gonna be like, no, we absolutely need a sign on all 4 sides of our building. Until we start getting to the point where we're like giving up variances left, right, and center because we wanna make sure that if Trader Joe's comes here, let's make sure that this is not, it's meeting those needs.
I could put an example together for the next time you all discuss this.
Like, I'm curious if
Yeah.
Dairy Queen meets this, this definition as an example, or I'm curious if some of the major commercial properties, like, will the Wawa meet this? And it's already that's already in place. That would all be non-conforming even though if it did, but I'm curious, because I don't think the intention is to be so restrictive that we limit good developers from coming in here and are keeping good businesses from being here. We're more concerned with a lot of the blighted and excessive signs that we've been seeing that, you know, has been discussed on the planning commission for a decade.
Why not say that businesses are entitled to a sign on every side of the building that's facing one or more streets? So if it's.
Well, that is right now, it does say that. Every street is allowed a sign, but it looks like it might be maximum of 2 per lot, but.
Yeah.
What we're saying is,
Yeah.
not if it's two streets, but in other words, if you have a sign that if somebody's coming down the street, they're gonna see it on the side of your building. Want to be able to have a sign on the side on the front, and the sign on the other side, so anywhere there's traffic that can see the sign, there can be a sign. What's the harm?
I guess my question here is real quick, where is the section? I remember we talked about having the waivability be just like saldo. Where do we put that in here?
For non-conforming or for?
Well, waivability means everything, right? I mean, and the saldo specifically states that any any requirement herein or heretofore stated may be waived by consent of the board of supervisors.
But Michael's saying, why go through that? For every building that wants signs on whatever sides are fronted, all right?
Right.
While
Assuming you
come up
want
the
that.
side, you need a sign there, right? On either side plus the front.
I do think, just real quick, this is a separate chapter, right? That was agreed?
Yes.
So technically, it's not under zoning, so it would be, anything would be waivable.
The township has a chapter reserved for signs and billboards, and this is
Right.
intended to go in that reserve section and then reference the zoning and saldo.
Right.
That was originally when the
Is
code
that
of ordinances
19?
put together with the intent.
Cause I just,
Or
I,
13.
not to say I
I
wanted
think it's
wide waivability, but I think we wanted the discretion, just like we do on lighting. Because the cost of compliance to do something nice is already gonna be significant, we didn't want them to need a public hearing before the zoning hearing board or something like that to get a variance on the sign, so my thought was. You know, the same waivers that go through the planning commission and ultimately decided by the supervisors, I think. To have those provisions available for this, I think makes sense too, because you have to prove. You know, your burden, you can't just say, hope you guys like this, go for it, you know. I think that there's a process to it, but I think it's worthwhile to have. I think that these provisions are generally fantastic and a massive improvement over what we have, but. I don't think that it will, you know, be perfect, but I also don't wanna rewrite the ordinance when something should get fixed.
Yeah, you don't wanna have to rewrite the
You know,
ordinance,
in another year
you know,
or
if a big project comes in and all of a sudden, you know, you don't wanna have to rewrite the ordinance.
Well, like I
It's
do
easy
see,
to
for
close.
instance, here. I mean, I would prefer. If you want your, what's the town you reference it?
Freeport,
Maine. You're gonna have much smaller signs, but they might still have them on every side, whereas this actually allows. Potentially a 200 square foot sign, you can only have two of them.
But it's very restrictive in Freeport.
Yeah, it's
Signs are
super
all
restrictive.
small,
Yeah,
And they're.
but I'm just saying, like, this is one area that, I mean, I'm not an engineer, so it's hard to go through this, because it's all like, what does this number mean? Is that
There
appropriate?
was a fairly, in the Wall Street Journal some years ago, a long time ago. There was an article about, Freeport, and they talked about the McDonald's. When they went in, and Freeport forced them to build a clapboard structure, it had to be a white clapboard structure. The golden arches were like this big, you know, so that's extreme, you know, but
We also don't have the clout to be able to
Right.
enforce that, or
But
just
how do
not have
we,
anything
the
there.
question, so the dilemma is, how do we get the cloud? And this is something that I've been philosophizing about and complaining about for a long time. Dress for success. You know,
You have to
let's
you have to
look
incentivize
good, so we attract good.
You have to incentivize success, if you want it to look nicer, you have to let them.
Well,
build
that's
more
what, that's
and more.
right, and that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
How do you go about incentivizing?
That's
Because having a clutter of signs or you know, the big billboards and stuff, I don't think that's gonna do it.
By the way, that's the other thing, what these sections we're talking about right now, 14,
Yeah.
17,
Yes,
is on-site, we're talking about on-site
I understand,
signage,
yeah,
not,
I do.
billboards is
We are
off-site.
not there
Yeah,
yet.
well, we did that, last time.
Yeah.
We talked
Right,
about it.
so they're permitted in those zones, but that's not exactly
Yeah,
what
yeah,
Michael
yeah,
said.
and
I guess I'm just a little confused, because I feel like we're talking about two different things. Are we finished with that section? Are we okay with those standards? And then do we want to talk about a like an escape clause,
Well, I
like waivers, or do we
I
want to
think-
move on to section
think we
17?
should permit waivers. You know, I think they should be able to be requested, they're. You know, there should be a burden, like if it's established why you have a very good reason to have it, but. I also wanna say that it's 7:54.
Yeah,
And I think we will feasibly get through section 17 before we hit 8,
Then go ahead,
and then.
move on.
We're not gonna finish today.
No, I was just saying, I wanna be, I mean, there's a number of folks here that have other business, and I think that we need to work on picking the next date, that way they can be heard, and then we can.
Yeah. And can I just implore everyone here, please read section 17 through 20, whatever the last one is, 22. There is some key points here around non-conforming uses, how do we remove permits, and a lot of this stuff is related to Ron's legal comments as well. And I had a bunch of questions, which I'm happy to follow with Ron alone, just so I can understand it, and
That's
we can make sure that in the next iteration, it eventually comes out, Alex, that any of these legal concerns are incorporated.
and Ron's piece is terrific. By the way.
Well, we specifically, there was, from our discussion, there was a bunch of questions that we were worried about.
Come
Okay,
So, Mr. Chairman, do you want to try to get through 17?
let's talk about 17 now.
4 minutes, okay.
This
And
is
then-
a pretty important section.
Yeah,
I'm not saying we're not to do it, I'm just saying it's so important that maybe we should not do it
No,
right now
this
and
is
do it in
great.
the next, but,
Unsafe, unlawful.
all right, carry on.
you wanna give a general overview and then we can decide whether or not we're okay doing this again on December 12th? Potentially starting at 6.
General overview is, so Ron actually reviewed this entire section. And, basically, I think Ron's comments can be talked about simultaneously with this section
Yep.
without me reading the whole thing. Basically, Ron indicated, so for section 17, removal of unsafe, unlawful, or abandoned signs. His comment was the qualifying events for an unsafe, unlawful, or abandoned sign are as per section 1A. If the sign becomes unsafe, in danger of falling, deteriorating, such that it no longer serves useful purpose of communication, is a nuisance, or is unlawfully erected. My concern is that what would constitute an unsafe sign or a nuisance sign does not refer to any standards and may be vague. So it sounds like the solicitor's recommendation is to clarify that. The solicitor also indicated section A. So section A may need some clarification as to what exactly those things are, which is probably, it's always good to have clarification ordinances. If an ordinance is too vague, then it is disadvantageous to the community. Section 1B, I think the language would be within 30 days of the receipt of the notice. So basically, section B mentions Smithfield Township may remove or cause to remove unsafe or unlawful signs at the expense of the owner or leasee in the event of the owner or person or for maintaining the sign is not comply with the terms of the notice within 30 days. And Ron recommends not the date of the notice, but date of receipt of the notice, which I think makes perfect sense.
Oh, I think you're gonna have a problem.
No.
I think what you want is notice to the owner of the property where the sign is located as listed in the assessment records. So that you know because that's who gets it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're just not gonna pick up some piece of certified mail.
Yeah.
And you can't very well
We have that issue.
serve a sign in the parking
Yeah.
lot with a constable.
And doesn't it require that they put the owner's name on the sign now? Wasn't that part of this?
No, that's on the temporary signs,
Yeah.
the 30-day signs.
But we know who the owner of the actual
Property
piece
is.
of real estate is.
Right.
And that would be the exact same notice that we would give them for, a tax sale, for example. That's where you start. Is the address of the owner of record in where they get the tax bills. I think that's your start. Once you start there, I believe you're on good footing.
And then Ron also said that you may need to add a provision in the event the property and or leasee avoids service of the notice. You touched on a little bit of that
Yes.
in what you just said.
Yeah, actually, if you want, Ron, if you want, we can talk, we can talk about that if you want.
Draft.
No, I was concerned the same as you.
Yeah, we're
Trying to dodge notice, so.
Yeah, I know, we have the same affliction, guy. Yes, I know.
And then section 1C, it says, the section also needs to have a provision that the owner, leasee, or for maintaining the sign is given notice by the township, which would start the 180-day removal period. So in this ordinance, it says it shall be the responsibility of the owner of any property upon which an abandoned sign is located to remove such a sign within 180 days of the sign of becoming abandoned as defined in the section, or remove the content of the sign in the case of an abandoned sign. Removal of abandoned signs shall include the removal of an entire sign, including the sign face, supporting structure, and structural trim.
This is thinking about an abandoned billboard.
Yeah.
Technically.
Okay,
That's what it's contemplating there?
That's where this language is coming from, is if you've got a giant billboard and it's been abandoned, hasn't been used for, what was the period of time? All
right, well.
It allows the township after hundred and eighty days after it's been abandoned to actually go up and remove it.
What if it's a similarly large or intrusive or ugly sign that's been abandoned and sitting for 1 year or whatever amount of time it needs to be abandoned to be considered abandoned? It doesn't have to be a billboard, does it? Can't
Correct,
be-
it doesn't.
How about a motel sign?
No, it didn't say billboard.
Correct.
This place is not a motel
It says
anymore,
abandoned sign.
but it's got a big sign in front that says motel.
So we had defined abandoned slightly different from unsafe and unlawful.
Mhm.
So, we're talking about an abandoned sign in this case. And unsafe can come up, unsafe and unlawful can come down faster.
And a nuisance, Ron? What is it, what is a nuisance?
Well, that's what my question is, and my comment is that we say the sign is unsafe. I think you have to have some standards to say what's unsafe.
Right.
And if it's a nuisance, I think you need to have some standards as to what constitutes a nuisance. The other things that you have for the qualifying event, a sign illegally erected, well, that is easy enough to figure out. And a sign in danger of falling, again, easy enough to figure out. That sort of combined with that safe, unsafe sign kind of thing.
Who determines whether it's gonna fall down?
Well, like, for example, right now, we're on 209, there's a sign that's literally fallen over.
Okay, well, that's easy. But what about one that's just abandoned and just hanging in there?
Well,
And it doesn't really show anything, doesn't.
So abandoned, that's why we gave a longer time period for abandoned.
but there is no time period for abandonment. It says here that the sign is deteriorated in such a fashion that it's no longer effective for communication.
Right,
So you could have a sign up and after 3 months of say a bad winter or something, that is no longer usable. Well, now you send notice to that owner. Because 180 days
right,
should not start until the owner gets notice.
I see.
But there is no time for the abandonment to occur. It can occur anytime. It can occur in 1 day. If some
Hurricane.
hurricane
Tornado.
or, something comes along and then destroys the sign, so it's no longer legible or no longer communicative.
Right, okay.
The last section D is just remedy.
I just want to bring up the fact that, and I have done this several times before, that to me, it seems like there's little difference between an electronic, what we call a sign, and a website advertisement. They're both advertisements, they're both electronic, they're both available to the public. And I was hoping that we could somehow in this section make those electronic advertisements also illegal as unlawful signs. And that what I'm getting at, and I have before, is that the advertisements for Airbnb, for instance, for lodgings within the township are illegal because those lodgings are illegal within the township. Now, Ron has disagreed with me on this, but I'd hope we could find a way to push something in like this, because right now, the only way we can go against people who have Airbnbs and advertise is through the zoning code, which is very difficult and also requires waiting periods, responses, and usually doesn't work. So I thought we could do it here, but it's missing, and I guess you don't want it. And as far as Ron said, it doesn't seem like it would fit.
So Ron,
Robert's correct. I don't want to interrupt you, but Robert, so Robert wanted to explore the possibility of expanding the definition of unlawful signs to include online advertisements. So it is pertinent in section 17, and Ron did provide
yeah, so I was gonna.
4 paragraphs, an explanation. If you'd like to deliberate on that, I don't think it's necessary to go over D. That's pretty self-explanatory. If you want to finish this conversation with this, I think that'd be reasonable.
I just want to say, Robert, to what you said. So Ron's one thing is if the challenge is you cannot restrict the content of a sign. That has been established in court.
But we
Is
are-
that correct?
Well, that's my concern, is that if you're saying that the sign is illegal, you are now dealing with its content.
Well, we're saying.
Once it's content based.
In this whole chapter 17, we're saying that if it advertises something unlawful, it's illegal. right?
Well, that's not this whole thing. I mean, there's environmental reference to, no, the sign is unlawful, not that it's promoting something unlawful.
Let me ask this question, isn't it possible to theoretically have a standalone ordinance that deals exclusively with the advertising of inactive but unlawful zoning use?
I think you can, but again, when you're.
Well, I don't think it belongs in signage, but
But I believe Robert's right in the sense that this would be a sign. I mean, if you're dealing with something that is out there, put on, whether it's a piece of cardboard or whether it's on your computer, it's saying something and communicating some kind of event or advertisement or something like that. I think it's a sign.
I mean,
I think you could put it.
I don't
if you
think, then
want
you're
to.
saying every advertisement is a sign, and I don't think that's the definition of a sign. I mean, if you wanna have an advertisement,
well, and I think
ordinance,
we
that's different.
should, I think we should
Maybe we
consider,
should.
I think we should consider that, because I think it's more applicable there. Especially if it's limited to, you know, if you're advertising something that is not a legal use, and I don't mean like with realty, because you can say, hey, this might be possible. I mean, like, if you're like, hey, I have a short-term rental, it is in the R1 zone and 100% not in, in association.
There's no question
That I think
that's illegal, but the point is that I don't know if you wanna make it a sign violation.
Well,
If
that's
you
what
find that out, you just say you're in violation of our ordinance, but doesn't allow you to advertise things illegally. And we get away from the sign stuff.
Well, then
We don't have to worry
that's
about
what I'm
content,
suggesting.
we don't have to worry about First
if we do
Amendment.
that in this
speech.
chapter, or if we do this in a standalone ordinance, then this chapter just make clear that unlawful means that the sign itself is unlawful, not what it advertises.
Okay.
Because I always assumed that if you put up a sign saying fireworks plus anti-tank weapons available on 209, that would be something that's.
No, because actually, everything this ordinance does is try not to, regulate the content.
Yeah,
Because,
I understand.
yeah.
Okay, so. We need to pick the next date. I earlier mentioned December 12th, the next planning commission meeting, but also doing it at 6 p.m. That way the regular meeting can start at 7.
Yeah.
Yes.
good idea.
Does that work for?
Does that work? Chris? Good. Yeah, guys, Nicole, you good with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we'll just note
Let's
that,
do it at 6.
that way it gets advertised.
I'd also like to congratulate the committee that put this together. I struggled for 3 years trying to do this. I know how hard it is. Very, very difficult. I think they've done an amazing job.
Oh, you're well.
Is this up this is up, right?
Mhm.
On the website for anybody to download? So if you're curious, like, how these guys are talking about, it's on the website. You can download it, read it.
Does it feel like 3 years?
A while.
Yeah.
like this.
Awesome, alright, so. We can take public comment on this and then entertain a motion to adjourn the joint session, so. Planning commission gets their regular business. Right,
Is there a procedure for public recording of potential violations?
yes, you can file the same complaint or request for action that you would for any other issue.
Keeping in mind, this is not
Yeah.
an ordinance right now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Right.
Alright, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the joint session.
So moved. Oh, moved to the next item.
All right,
All in
Second.
favor?
Yep.
Bye.
all right, we'll see you back on December 12th. Thanks,
you.
guys. All right.
Can I ask a question for good order?
Okay.
Now that
Yeah,